Good evening, everyone. We have a lot to get to tonight, including the recent intern turned Trump-appointed judge who struck down the transit mask mandate. Her decision ignores or distorts the opinion of most medical experts and raises the danger of a surge in cases, all thanks to a single judge who was appointed after practicing law for a total of 8 years and was rated not qualified by the American Bar Association. We will have much more on that coming up. But we begin tonight with the second phase of Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine, now fully underway. The devastation is already evident across eastern Ukraine in what a senior U.S. official called a prelude to a larger offensive operation in Russia's so-called Battle of the Donbass. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov confirmed that the goal of the offensive is the complete liberation of the Donbass. Well, here is what Russia's version of liberation looks like. Fresh attacks today near Kharkiv, where Russian missiles struck a residential area, killing at least 4 people. Mark Stone of Sky News reported from the region.
The breadth of the Monday Russian barrage has been remarkable. This is Kharkiv, 250 miles north of Mariupol, 700 miles east of the attacks in Lviv. Ukraine's second city, still being bombarded, still resisting occupation. But here's the cost. The victim is her father.
The frontline city, Kramatorsk, also came under attack today. That is the same city where Russia attacked a train station earlier this month, killing dozens of people. Russian troops were able to seize control of one city, Kreminna, according to the regional governor. Ukrainian troops withdrew amid attacks from all sides. After the failure of Putin's Plan A, the Pentagon says Russia has added 2 additional combat units, adding tens of thousands of troops in the new phase of Russian aggression. Today, President Biden held a call with allies to discuss support for Ukraine and ways to hold Russia accountable. Biden plans to send another round of artillery to Ukraine, and the White House is preparing to announce another substantial military aid package later this week. Meanwhile, in a meeting with the heads of the IMF and the World Bank, Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen blamed Putin's war for worsening international food insecurity, exacerbating an already dire situation, a situation that's already critically felt in the besieged port city of Mariupol, cut off from food and water for weeks now. As Russia continues its campaign to take what remains of the city, the last Ukrainian forces are barricaded in a steel plant, defying Russian calls to surrender. One Ukrainian commander said hundreds of civilians are also sheltering in the plant, which Ukrainian officials say is the target of anti-bunker bombs. Russia's defense ministry claims that there will be a ceasefire in the area of the plant tomorrow. But as the Russian army, which Ukrainian President Zelensky called tonight the most barbaric and inhuman in the world, continues its campaign to wipe entire cities like Mariupol off the planet, Camille Galieve, a fellow at the nonpartisan Woodrow Wilson Center, noted in a must-read Twitter thread that the ongoing, incomprehensible Russian brutality toward Ukraine is explained by the Russian abhorrence for Ukrainians and their culture. He writes, the assault, now symbolized with a Z, isn't motivated in the name of security, alliances, or even political affiliation. Quote, it's the need to extinguish wrong cultural memes and impose correct ones. He added that the invasion happened because Russia never accepted the existence of Ukraine in the first place. And by Russia, I mean not only the state, but also the people, especially the cultural elites. Joining me now is former NATO Supreme Allied Commander, retired 4-star Navy Admiral James Stavridis. He is MSNBC Chief International Security and Diplomacy Analyst. And Kimberly St. Julian Varnon, historian and PhD student at the University of Pennsylvania Department of History. And Professor St. Julian Varnon, I want to start with you on that last point, because I think that, what this thread was sort of laying out is that the West is trying to look at this as some sort of conventional armed conflict that has to do with Russia's, sort of fear for its own security or their fear of NATO or their paranoia. But what he says, it's about something worse. It's about Russia's attitude that essentially Ukrainians are just inferior Russians who have been brainwashed by Nazis to not believe they're Russian. If they would just accept becoming Russian again, then they would deserve to live. But if they don't, they deserve to die. Your thoughts?
I have to agree. And I think we can take this from Putin's own talking points before the war and up to 7 years before the war. He wrote a 7,000-word essay about his conception of Russian history. And in that conception, he denies the sovereignty and the existence of Ukraine as a separate entity. And even up to this week and this weekend, we've seen really horrifying discussions on Первый канал, Russian Channel 1, part of the state media, where they're talking about using Ukrainian POWs as for labor to re-educate them. So I think this is very much an issue of trying to erase the cultural legacies of Ukraine. And this is very much kind of part of the Russian part and parcel and why we're seeing this barbarity against Ukraine. So to kind of approach this from a convention of stand of war is to misunderstand the point of this. This is about extermination.
And to stay with you for just a moment, Professor, I mean, the New York Times talks about the Orthodox Church, the Russian Orthodox Church's involvement and their complicity in it. The Ukraine war has pitted combatants under the Moscow Patriarch Kirill against each other and has placed Ukrainian worshippers in an especially untenable position. The Patriarch has blessed the war, calling it a struggle of metaphysical significance, and touted Russian soldiers for defending the fatherland. So when you throw in that religious cant, it almost sounds like ISIS more than it does like a conventional state.
It definitely is a marriage of church and state. And if you think about it in an American Western way, you won't see this marriage of church and state. But for a long time, Patriarch Kirill has been the rubber stamp for Putin's behavior. We can see this in 2014 with the forced annexation of Crimea. And he has been an active fan of the war in Ukraine. And so I think it does alienate the thousands of people who are in Ukraine who practice Russian Orthodoxy, but it also further alienates people who are part of the Ukrainian Orthodox Church, which just recently became autocephalous a couple of years ago. So I think we can also understand this not only as a political problem, this is also a ravaging and destruction of cultural and religious ties between Russia and Ukraine that were forged over centuries.
And so, Admiral Stavridis, how does one fight, a war that is not about anything conventional? It is almost a religious fanaticism and a belief that the people you're fighting don't exist. And that, another part of this thread said, at first, Russians thought of Ukrainians as redeemable, but the fact that they're resisting being reconscripted into Russia means they're not redeemable. They deserve to die. That is almost ISIS-like thinking. How does one fight an army that is thinking like that?
You fight it with the truth. And, this is reminiscent of many struggles we've seen. This is a genocide. These are people of Ukrainian origin who are being destroyed because of their nature, because of their ethnicity, because of their position in history. We've seen it in the way Armenians, we've seen it in the way Jews, we've seen it in the way many races have been attacked in genocidal ways. So you start from a position of telling the truth. Number two, tactically, I'm picking up my cell phone here, you very consciously think of this as a weapon in this war. You tell the truth, you videotape, you show the atrocities of Bucha, you call them out, you give voice to the victims. By doing that, you rally the world ultimately against this kind of behavior. It's a long, hard struggle, but it is the most important one of our times.
And I'm going to show you, Admiral, this map that we have that shows that what Russia controls right now, the physical territory that they control. You can see that they're trying to squeeze in from the east and squeeze in from the north. They've already lost the idea of going right for Kyiv. But can the weapons that of Ukraine have right now and that we are sending them, is that enough to repel Russia and stop them from essentially annexing the entire eastern part and southern part of Ukraine? With what they have now, can they repel this?
I think they can. And at the end of the day, in the conversation you and I and Kimberly are having, it's all about will. It's about the power to resist what is wrong. And that is the center of gravity in this fight. It is what the Ukrainians have, and it is what their president Zelensky personifies. We are giving them the tools, but they bring to the table that will to resist. I think they have everything they are going to need in terms of will and spirit. Our job is to win the logistic foot race, get them the weapons, get them the tools. They will do the job.
Let me play for both of you President Biden, and he was asked again about whether or not he planned to visit Kyiv.
Will you visit Kyiv, Mr. President?
The answer is I don't know.
Do you want to visit Ukraine?
I've been to Ukraine many times, just haven't been there recently.